Hi, everybody. It is Naomi Jerez, food and health coach. I am super excited about my conversation today with Adda and how she reversed her diabetes type 2. I am waiting for her to hop on. Here she is. And let's get this conversation started. Adda, I think I'm going to invite you, okay? If you're watching the replay, welcome. Let us know what your thoughts are in the comments. Hi, Ava.
Hi, hi, hi.
How are you?
I am good. I thought I was not going to make it. Had a thing to do with my daughter. I was actually talking about sugars at her third grade class earlier, just like 30 minutes ago. So, good news. The school is like right in front of my house, so I ran over here.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's great because right after this, I run to pick up my kids in
There
school.
you go.
So
I'll
as
tell
I,
you, we have so much in common. It's like I feel like we're like sisters from another mother or something.
yes. So I'm glad you made it though. And I'm really
Yes.
happy to have this conversation. I'll give everybody a little bit of a background why, and then like you can introduce yourself and share your story with us. Um, So again, I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Naomi Jerez. I am a food and health coach. I help women take back control of their nutrition, improve their health, lose weight without dieting while living their best life. And Ada and I met on Instagram. She reached out to me one day and then we connected over Zoom and she shared with me her story about how she reversed her diabetes and how it turned into her life passion, right? And diabetes
Yes.
is something very prevalent in our community,
Yes. Yes.
super prevalent. It's something that I think it's so normalized now, and it's just like
Yes.
if diabetes runs in your family and you're predisposed, you're kind of expecting it to come along. You're not
Yes.
surprised when your lab work is getting,
Yes.
worse and worse at the doctors. And then oftentimes the resources that we receive are not culturally relevant. So it becomes very overwhelming. People are told in our culture and our communities to stop eating corn and rice and plátanos and tortillas and all these things that are like cultural staples in our food. Right. And then they're like, eat kale and quinoa. And people in our community is like, what is that? And what is this meal plan that I need to follow? When it becomes very overwhelming. So when I heard of that story, I'm like, we have to talk about this and
Yeah.
let a woman
Yes.
from our community who has our
Yes.
culture, who eats our food, explain to us what she did and how she's maintaining this. So, Ada, introduce yourself.
Yes.
Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Ada Ramos. I like to call myself a wellness mentor. I post everything that I do online. You follow my stories, everything that I eat, and I also manage my blood sugars. I actually, let me show you real quick. Uh,
You
I
have
wear one.
a
I have a CGM. I've been wearing one for 2 years because, as you probably no, because I had that history. I become obsessed with blood sugars, and that's what I do. What I do
Can you
now.
let us know what CGM stands for those who don't know?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. It's a continuous glucose monitor. It checks your blood sugars live. Maybe like a 5 minute delay, but it's pretty much constant, real time. And you are able to see how the food that you're eating, and it's not just about the food, guys, which is we're going to talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
Your lifestyle, how exercise, lack of sleep, stress, how all of that affects your blood sugars. It's not just about the food. It's not just about the food. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. But again, why do I do what I do, and why do I preach what I preach? Is because I feel like I'm not the only one. I feel like I was a victim of the environment. I was a victim of our healthcare system.
Hmm.
Because looking back, you look at all my blood markers, and I saw a trend. I definitely saw the trend, 80s, 90s, 100. Even when it was already outside of the range, like I clearly remember the first time I asked my doctor, it was 106. I'm like, doctor, why is my blood sugar out of range? Oh, you're getting older and you might want to lose a couple of pounds. That's all they said. Didn't bother to even question about what is your family history like, what is your A1C. What is your insulin? Nothing. I myself didn't know about these things until later. But that's not even the thing. I didn't, okay, my doctor's not concerned. I shouldn't be concerned. I continue to do what I'm doing. How I got into this is because in my forever search to be skinny, typical Latina, I hate to stereotype, but Latinas tend to be in this forever search for the next magic pill, the next protocol, the next diet, the next thing that's going to help us lose weight. So that has been my life since I was 20, I would say. No, I would say 19 is when I really became conscious about how I looked and about my appearance. I remember moving to New York City and from Georgia. So, my God, I'm in the big city and everybody looks so good. I need to keep up with the Joneses. So that's when I became self-aware of my weight. So it's been a forever search of losing the weight. But anyway, so it wasn't until 2015 when I enrolled in this program. I enrolled in this gym, and they were endorsing a specific diet. And of course, here I am. It's new and exciting. I'll do it. Whatever. I'll do it. Sign me up. So it was working out and diet. Well, this diet was now it's become very popular. Back then, it was still kind of like, it wasn't that well known. They were endorsing the ketogenic diet. So, I mean, eat fat to lose fat. How does that work? No, there's no way this can be healthy for me. There's no way. So I'm like, yes, I'm open to do this because I'm so excited. That diet was becoming very popular at that point. So I'm like, okay, it works for weight loss, but man, I'm afraid of my health. I'm afraid I'm doing something hard for my body. So in that process of learning about this diet that this gym was endorsing as part of the weight loss challenge, it was a 6-week challenge, I needed to do some research. But get this, they had a raffle. They're like, I want the members of this challenge to write me a essay of why do you think they were raffling a glucometer. I'm sorry, let me go back. They were raffling a glucometer. And the way that you enter the raffle was to write an essay as to why you deserve this glucometer.
What's a
glucometer is the machine to check your blood sugars. I'm like, oh, well, I already know my blood sugars have been trending high. And second, I have a family history the size of Manhattan of diabetes. Both my sisters are diabetic. Both my parents are diabetic. I mean, I have diabetes all around me. So I wrote my little paper. Yes, I think I'm deserving this because, I myself are already out of range with my blood sugars and I have a long family history, blah, blah, blah. I won the glucometer. Yay! So guess what I started doing? I started checking my blood sugars on a daily basis. That was part of also winning the thing. You needed to log your blood sugars and turn it in. Naomi, let me tell you, surprise, surprise.
What'd you find?
My blood sugars were trending in the 130s, 140s, 150s fasting.
And where should it be?
Under 100. Under 100. So that was, to me, first of all, I'm diabetic.
And fasting means before eating something, right?
Before eating, yes.
Usually blood sugar spikes a little. It should spike within a certain range once you eat, but without eating, it should be under 100.
I was uneducated at that point, of course, about what all this meant. All I knew is, is this normal? Why are my blood sugars this high? And yeah, surprise, surprise. And I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise really, because first of all, I have the predisposition. I mean, predispositions, it's just like, it's like the gun, but your lifestyle pulls the trigger. So I do have the genetic predisposition of diabetes, but my lifestyle will dictate if I actually become diabetic or if I remain diabetic. So I started taking things into my own hands. I'm like, okay, fine. This is not normal. I am clearly diabetic. I got to do something about it. So I continued to research about blood sugars, and I learned about this beautiful hormone, insulin.
Yeah.
And I became obsessed with insulin and blood sugars. Because how can someone that goes to the doctors every single year all of a sudden realize, oh, you're diabetic? How does that happen? How does that happen? How do you go to the doctors every year and then suddenly, boom, you're diabetic?
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. And I feel like our healthcare system has it all wrong. I feel like we are too glucose centric. So as long as your blood sugars are within normal range, which is below 100, which in my opinion, with what I know now, even 100 is like you need to already look at you
Yeah.
need to look at your lifestyle already.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So I learned everything I needed to know about insulin. And now I no longer trust normal blood sugar numbers. I tell my clients, I don't trust blood sugar numbers until I know how insulin is doing. Because that's really how you can predict if you are going to become a diabetic or not. You can actually predict if you're going to be a diabetic or not. Did you know that? Did you know that?
So what's the difference between blood sugar and insulin?
And that's a great question because a lot of people get that confused. A lot of
Yeah.
people get that confused. Glucose is the primary source of energy in the body. We know that. Every time we eat, glucose goes up. It's how we fuel our bodies, glucose. The main macronutrients that makes glucose rise is carbohydrates. You
Mm-hmm.
do get a response. Well, no, that's insulin. So carbohydrates turn into glucose at the end of the day. Now, that glucose just don't stay in the blood system floating around. The body deems that as an alert. That sugar needs to go to the cells so the cells can use it as energy. So we have a hormone in our body that is responsible for such a job. And the hormone is called insulin. So
Mm-hmm.
blood sugars go up. You eat carbohydrates. Blood sugars go up. Pancreas gets a message. Oh, blood sugar in the system, blood sugar in the system. And
Mm-hmm.
depending on the load of blood sugars, that alarm is blood sugar in the system, come to the rescue, or, just do your thing, come clean it up. So insulin comes, grabs that excess blood sugars and delivers that to the cells. Now the cells has two options. I'm a healthy individual. I'm active. I have good metabolic health. I have the demand for this glucose. Bring it on. I want it. I need it. It's fuel. I want it.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is when you become insulin resistant, when you become metabolically unflexible, hey, dude, I don't need that much energy. I still have energy from 2 years ago. I don't need this much glucose right now. Go figure out what you're going to do. So the cells resist that sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, then, his blood sugars, just floating around the blood system. The body doesn't like that. We need to do something about it. The cells don't want it. So now insulin has no choice to either release more insulin because now it gets the message, maybe I didn't do good enough of a job. So I need to now release more insulin to really push it in. It's like overstuffing a already full suitcase full of clothes. When we go to the Dominican Republic,
Yeah.
you want to stuff that last piece of bathing suit, that last pair of jeans, you just getting on that suitcase to force it in. The body can do that by pushing more insulin. Or when there's just really not just, I don't care how much you push, I don't have room for you. Then that's when we start now creating fatty liver because that glucose got to go somewhere. So the body will store it in your liver, it will store it in your pancreas, in your organs,
In
belly
your
fat,
belly fat.
lipos. Where that excess fat gets accumulated is very genetically driven. So depending on the genetics, but the bottom line is that the body has to remove that sugar from your blood system.
Mm-hmm.
COC.
Yeah.
COC. Okay, because it can only handle so much at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And did you know that we can only handle 1 teaspoon of sugar at a time? 1 teaspoon. I mean, think about that. The class that I was in this morning, those third graders were like, what?
Mm-hmm.
When I show them, like in their breakfast alone, how much sugar they're consuming.
Yeah.
And can I show you the props that I used for my presentation earlier today?
Yes. It's like we're third graders. A lot of us don't know. What's that? Oh, the Eggos?
This is a typical American breakfast in an
Yeah.
American family.
Yeah.
And now this is making a good choice. This is whole grain, by the way. Whole grain waffles. So you're trying to make better choices. So you go for the whole grain. So let's say I start my day with 2 whole grain waffles.
How much
And
fiber?
then
You have the food label?
it has 3 grams of fiber per 1 single waffle and 3 grams of protein. Okay. And then you're going to put 2 tablespoons of syrup, because who eats waffles without syrup, right?
That's fake syrup, people. If you maple syrup on Tuesday, know how to goes. This is not even actual maple syrup. It's actually just high fructose
Yeah.
syrup, caramel coloring, and some water.
Yes, and let's say that you drink some orange juice with that.
Mm.
When you calculate the amount of carbohydrates that is in those 2 waffles and turn them into what would be the equal of teaspoons of sugar, those 2 waffles equals to 11 teaspoons of sugar. 11.
Just the waffles alone. We're not counting
Just the
syrups and
waffles alone. The 2 tablespoons of syrup will equal to 6.25 teaspoons of sugar. And then the 8 ounces of orange juice is 6.5 teaspoons of sugar. So just your breakfast alone, you are consuming 27 teaspoons of sugar, your breakfast alone. And you made a good choice. You chose the whole grain waffles. You only did 2 tablespoons of syrup. Who does that, by the way?
and
But
one
you,
fruit
but
juice.
but you are making good choices because you're self-aware of making good choices, and you went for the orange juice that is freshly squeezed from your backyard.
That's all for Florida.
27 27 teaspoons of sugar. Once people realize that when I talk about sugars, I'm not talking about the white powder that you put in your coffee alone. Now you start to become aware of the amount of glucose that we're consuming.
Yeah.
And now you start to say, no freaking wonder.
Yeah.
No wonder.
And you're
No
not going
wonder.
to a marathon after this because, like Ada said, life is not just the food. If you were going to go run and bike, that your body can use that energy, like she was saying. But most of us are just sitting for the whole day. So, like she was explaining, your body doesn't know what to do with all this energy because you're not using it.
There's no demand. There's no demand. And that's what I was telling the third grader class just now. Because I'm like, you could sit I mean, I felt bad at one point. I'm like, guys, I'm not here to scare you. Sugar is just energy, okay? It's just energy. I'm not here to scare you, but they were like mind blown. And it is mind blowing when you make that connection that sugar is not just the white powder that you add to your desserts and your coffee. Every single carbohydrate will turn into sugar. Now, having said that, because I don't want people thinking that, oh my God, I shouldn't eat carbohydrates, carbohydrates, they're the enemy, they're the devil, they're going to make me sick, they're going to give me diabetes, oh my God. No. We just need to learn how to use them responsibly. Mm-hmm. Understanding how the body uses them, what it turns into, and how metabolism works. I, unfortunately, in order to reverse my condition, I did have to go through a restrictive program. Mm-hmm. But because I was already metabolically sick.
Yeah.
What I like to preach to people is, don't get to the point. Let's not allow ourselves to get to the point where you now have no choice
but to be so restrictive.
But to be restrictive. Mm-hmm. Because restrictions suck. Mm-hmm. I mean, they suck. We're Latinas. I mean, I like my bread. I like my rice. But I had to give up bread for 4 years. I didn't eat bread and rice.
To reverse it, right?
Yes.
And I really highlight what others saying. It doesn't mean this is what you need to do, but if you don't need to get to that point, and this is
exactly
what we're explain here, you don't need to give up bread for years if you're using it responsibly, like she's saying.
Correct.
Yourself, you can always have it.
The thing is, we are just like we are glucose centric in this country. We're also too calorie centric.
Oh my gosh.
So as long as we are within our calories, you get the clean bill of health. You're doing great.
Yeah.
But then we get to our 30s, 40s, and 50s, and we get to this condition, and then you question yourself, why? How did I get here? Mm-hmm. I was eating within my calories. Mm-hmm. We have to understand the physiology about nutrients and partitioning, how the body breaks down this food and how it is used. I briefly explained what happens when you eat glucose, okay? We need something to manage. First of all, again, glucose is just energy. You need to ask yourself, do I have the demand for this quick acting energy? Because that's another one.
Mm-hmm.
Glucose is quick acting, it's fast.
Yeah.
It's fast. Okay. And also understanding that glucose is not the only form of energy that the body can use.
Mm-hmm.
We forget about its little friends. You know, you have glucose on this end, but then you have another source of energy that the body uses. Glucose, and then what do we have? You know
Fat.
this? You know, it's fat. People fear fat so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Good body
unbelievable.
fats, okay?
No, well, we can talk about that. We can go on the
Yeah.
rabbit hole of fat. You know, not all fats are created equal. The same way that not all
Not,
carbohydrates are created equal.
yes, there's a wide range
Okay?
for every single type of food. Yes, keep going.
So we have those two fuel sources, but we only hear glucose, glucose, glucose. Why? Because we've been told that the brain can only run on glucose.
Mm-hmm.
So we use that understanding, which is real. It's real. There's no lie. You know, so we use that concept and run with it without thinking about anything else. I need glucose. I cannot survive without glucose. That's how we process information. And we get stuck on this mind frame that we need glucose for survival. And that's where we got it all wrong, because now we're so glucose centric that that's all we eat, not understanding that the overconsumption of that can lead us to metabolic issues, metabolic inflexibility, because now we are glucose dependent. We
Mm-hmm.
have trained our body to be dependent on glucose. So when you remove just a little bit of it, the brain goes crazy. The
And
body goes crazy.
is when your blood sugar starts to become dysregulated. Like
That's
it's
when you become too exactly.
all over the place. And metabolic inflexibility is when your body cannot go from burning like the glucose, like she's saying, to burning fat. There should be
Exactly.
body should be go through the two
Correct.
with ease, but when it gets metabolically inflexible, it can't
Correct.
go into burning fat anymore. And this is why a lot of
Yes.
go ahead.
Correctly. And that's when people, like, if you have a hard time, if you cannot go more than 4 hours without eating, I am so sorry to tell you, my friends, you are metabolically inflexible. We should be able to go hours and hours without eating. So to me, that's sign number one that you're not burning fat efficiently.
Yeah.
You're not getting to your fat stores efficiently because you're so glucose dependent.
And I want to say something about like how you get hungry, because if you go from not being hungry to being hangry,
That's another sign. Being
that's
hungry. You shouldn't
another
be
sign.
hungry.
But
Yeah.
getting to hunger, it's like, oh, I'm noticing I'm starting to get hungry. And you're not like ravenous, wanting to eat the first thing that you find, like angry and all that. So there's also a difference.
I call that urgent hunger. Because I mean, you're gonna get hungry at some point. But
Yeah.
if you have urgent hunger, we have work to do. We
Mm-hmm.
have work to do because body fat simply is stored energy. I was telling the kids this morning, think of it as a pantry. You know, you open the fridge and the fridge is empty. What do you do? What's the first thing you do? You go to the pantry, right? So when your blood sugars go down, the body's going to start to want to find other fuel sources because homegirl is not feeding me. I have low blood sugars. So in a healthy body, the system should be able to say, okay, I guess she's not feeding me today. No worries. I have plenty of body fat to fuel me until she decides to feed me. But again, when we become so glucose dependent, we become that process becomes inefficient. The body does not tap to our fat stores efficiently. So it demands glucose, demands it. That's beyond your willpower. That's beyond you and how strong you are. And I'm going to
And
power through
great.
this. Is beyond you. It is physiological response. The body will demand that sugar, COC. Okay, and that translates into that urgent hunger, the sweaty palms, the moodiness, hangriness, the tiredness,
Jittery.
the brain fog, the jitteriness. I mean, all of that, things that we relate as normal. It's normal. I'm just hungry.
Yeah.
You know, is the body telling you that it has a hard time tapping to its reserves. And that's what body fat is, guys. It is food, stored food for when you don't have any. That's why we don't diet at night. We're not eating for 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that's why also fat burning happens at night. That's why sleep is so important. Get your sleep.
Yeah.
Get your sleep.
So it helps you manage stress, which is also great. Blood sugar and
Yes, yes, yes.
that,
And actually, that lack of sleep is directly linked to insulin resistance. It's
yeah,
actually causal. It's not even association. You know how association doesn't equal causation?
yeah.
No. Lack of sleep and stress is a causal, it causes insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is just a precursor to diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
So good luck managing weight. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
become weight loss resistance when you have insulin resistance. So we have to be more on top of insulin and stop being so hyper focused on glucose, because you're going to go to your doctors every single year and your glucose are going to be normal. They're going to be normal, 80s, 90s. Look at mine. Mine, no red flags, even when it went above 100.
Mm-hmm.
Too glucose centric. Now, you check your insulin levels. Oh, no wonder my glucose are normal, because I have Miss Insulin here overworking.
Yeah.
That lady is overworking, keeping my sugars down for
What
so long.
for glucose versus insulin?
Insulin is insulin. I call insulin like the manager. Insulin manages glucose. So I cannot really rely on glucose if I don't know how insulin is doing.
How do you test?
It's a blood test. The thing about insulin, Naomi, is that it's not part of our guidelines. It's not part of a annual panel.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctors will refuse to, unless they're more open-minded, which a lot of doctors are becoming more open-minded and they're being more aware, because this information is actually coming mainstream now. Mm-hmm. We have realized that we have made a huge mistake in our healthcare system, where we just relying too much on glucose. So doctors, I feel like textbooks will be rewritten at some point, because it's becoming so prevalent now. We have a pandemic of diabetes in our country.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually looking it up, and I'm on this. I can share a stat.
Mm-hmm. But to answer your question, the difference in glucose is the molecule that the body uses as energy, but who manages glucose, how the body uses the glucose, is the insulin. Insulin is the shuttle. It's like, come on, guys, hop on. I'm going to take you over here. But too much insulin is actually, in my opinion, equally bad or worse than high blood sugars.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at some point, the poor pancreas is going to wear out. That's why they say that that diabetes is a disorder of age. That you're getting older, you're gonna get diabetes. That's because I overworked my pancreas for 30 freaking years. So obviously, I'm gonna get to my 40s and my 50s with a diagnosis. But that's because I've been doing the damage for the last 30 years.
This is why I'm talking to you. I've been over and over again. The things that you're seeing now because you're older is because your body's sick and tired of what you've been doing for the last 20, 30 years. So it's giving up. It's like, all right, I'm throwing in the towel. So exactly what you're saying. And then it's like you're getting older, you're predisposed, all these things. But no.
That's another thing. Yes. If you have that predisposition, because the predisposition is real, I'm not going to tell you not to ignore it. But if you do have that predisposition, even more reason to be mindful of this and demand a insulin test from your physician. You have to ask your physician for an insulin test, particularly if you have what we already talked about. You have the inability to go hours without eating. You get hangry. You get dizzy. You have to always have a snack with you. It's like the thought of going on a trip stresses you out, because what am I going to eat? And if you have high hypertension, oh my goodness, if you have hypertension, likely you are insulin resistant. If you have already problem losing weight, if you have extra body fat, all of these things, your body speaks to you. Yeah. Our bodies are speaking to us. So the more reason to say, okay, let me check my insulin, because if insulin is high, you can already know you are on your way to a pre-diabetic diabetes diagnosis. 5, 10, 20 years from now. It's happening. It's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening. But because we don't check insulin, we only focus on the blood sugars. Blood sugars are normal for a lot of years because insulin is over pushing it down, pushing it down, pushing it down. So you get this false sense of security, false sense that you're doing things right. When if you realize that normal sugars are because you have high insulin, now you can see, oh boy, I need to check this. I have work to do. Now you manage the insulin. Now you're really making progress because you are addressing the root cause.
Root cause.
It's the same thing when you actually get the diagnosis, unfortunately. Now you have to be on diabetic medications. But diabetes medication is not helping. It's not treating the insulin. It's treating the glucose. So you still not, that's why they also say that diabetes is a progressive disorder when it's not.
Yeah. And then
It's a progressive, I'm sorry, syndrome. It's a progressive disorder because we're managing symptoms. So of course you're not going to get better. So every year they have to raise it. They have to raise it, change the medication, double it up until they say, man, I'm going to have to put you on insulin now. Now you're going to have insulin injections.
Yeah.
Which again, if the problem is insulin, what is insulin injections going to do?
And on top of that, nobody is teaching everybody how to eat to help manage this. It's just, here's the medicine, here's some handouts.
They do say that they try to counsel first with dietary interventions and lifestyle interventions, but we do know that that's not helping. It's not enough. Yeah.
So many people that have come to me and asked me because they don't build connections with these people who are there to help them. And I'm not saying they don't know what to do, but it's so different when you have somebody that speaks your language, that's culturally relevant, that knows the type of stressors that you have going on. Or a lot of times I hear that they get handouts and it's like, here's foods you should eat, here's foods you should not eat. And it's not in a language they understand. It's not food that they are familiar with. So it becomes very intimidating because food is culture, food is community, food is love, food is joy. And if you don't find that connection with somebody that's trying to help you, and the resources that they're giving you, is really difficult to implement those changes.
But Naomi, let's not go too far. What does the American Diabetes Association tell you to eat? The leading source.
Carbohydrates is the biggest one.
The leading source. The association that the government has put to help our country manage diabetes. What are they telling us to eat?
Yeah, the biggest one.
And guess why? Because all our fear of fat.
Which
because
is
without sugar, because you can't survive without sugar. That's the concept. If you cannot survive without sugar, of course I'm going to have to rely on sugar because sugar is my life. Sugar is what's fueling me. But we tend to forget that we have another fuel source to use. Mm-hmm. But we're so afraid of it because we have demonized fats. We grew up thinking that fat is going to make you fat and clog your arteries and you're going to die of a heart attack.
It depends on the type of fat. There are some fats.
Absolutely.
But
we can go on that rabbit hole if you want to, but the point of the matter is that we have a double whammy. We have a dual sword problem here. Is the knowledge, the thought that we cannot live without sugar and our fear of fat.
Yeah.
So if I cannot eat fat because it's going to make me fat, it's going to kill me, and I'm going to have a heart attack, I have no choice but to continue to eat the sugar. And if I continue to eat the sugar and I have a blood sugar dysregulation problem, how am I going to fix it? Right? Mm-hmm. So we have to understand too, and I'm not saying give up carbs altogether. I chose to do that. And I did that for 4 years, and I was able to reverse my diabetes. My A1C is 5.2. So when I first dropped all the carbs, because I went like I went keto. I went totally in ketosis. I was eating less than 20 grams of carbohydrates a day. My A1C went down to 4.9. And guess what my insulin was? My insulin was a 2.
My God.
It was a beautiful thing. Once I started introducing carbs back in, once I lost the fear of eating carbs,
Yeah.
my A1C now is in 5, 6. I'm sorry. My insulin is in the 5 and the 6s, and my A1C is in the 5.2. And I'm always keeping an eye on those two numbers because that's what actually is going to dictate to me my level of carbohydrate. I think from my experience, personal and working with others, that there's benefits from doing a level of carbohydrate restriction. I don't care if you're diabetic or not. There's therapeutic benefits of restricting carbohydrates, particularly, especially those that are refined, super processed, and the added sugars. No one would ever debate you for that. No one would ever debate you there. We are eating way too much processed, refined carbohydrates, way too many added sugars. So if you just make that quick switch, just those two things, drop this hyper palatable, hyper processed, refined sugars and carbohydrates, that alone is going to help your blood sugar so much.
And just a pin on that, we're talking specifically about blood sugar here, but what Adda's recommending also has an impact on chronic inflammation that and disrupts all of your metabolic health. It causes heart disease, it causes autoimmune diseases, things like that. And it contributes to hormone health because insulin, like you said, is a hormone. And once insulin starts to become
dysregulate,
it also dysregulates other hormones in your body, sex hormones, your estrogen, progesterone, your serotonin, your happiness hormones. So if you are having issues, let's say with menstruation, with infertility, with autoimmune conditions, you want to be taking a look at all these different aspects because we're honing in on one section here, but those recommendations that she's giving cast a wide net in terms of your health and what it can do for you.
Absolutely, because we know sugar spikes it's a source of inflammation. At the end of the day, I remember a doctor, her name is Coco March. She always says, there's no disease without inflammation. Okay? So having chronically high levels of blood sugars flowing around causes inflammation. Okay? And even if it's not chronically high in your blood system, but those sugar spikes, it causes stress. That is a stressful event. And how the body responds to stressful events is creating inflammation, because then after the inflammation, there has to come the repair. Okay? So inflammation is key. Okay? That's why, just making those two changes by reducing inflammation, any other situation that you may be battling with has an inflammation component to it. So of course, they're going to get better. They're going to get better. Not to mention, again, insulin, unlike a lot of other hormones, is one of the very few hormones, not to say the only one hormone, that actually acts on every tissue organ in the body. Insulin has its dirty hands in every single tissue and organ in the body.
Receptors.
So it will. It is known as the fat storing hormone, number one. Okay, but that's why PCOS. That's why erectile dysfunction is related to insulin as well. They actually call PCOS as the insulin resistance of the ovaries. Let's not go too far. Let's go to the brain.
Just to clarify, there's like 3 buckets where your root of PCOS can come from, but this is one of the top overarching ones.
Yes. The same thing with Alzheimer's. It can be multifactorial, but they're calling Alzheimer's insulin resistance of the brain. They're calling it diabetes type 3.
Yes.
Why is that? You're eating a lot of sugar, but the brain is not being fed the sugar because it's resistant to the insulin. Okay? Ovaries, erectile dysfunction in men, hypertension. All of those are directly linked to insulin. So once you manage your blood sugars, you're going to manage your insulin. Once you manage your insulin, you're going to manage your blood sugars, and all these things start to get better. Your blood pressure all of a sudden starts to regulate. You don't need more medication. How's that happening? All I dropped was sugar. I thought that hypertension was all about the salt.
Yeah.
So it's amazing once you start to fix one hormone and then the rest start to adjust, because it's a channel of communication. They just communicate one with another,
Yeah.
so if you improve in one, you have the body will auto regulate all the other ones, and things start to fall into place. And
Yeah.
it all starts with one simple change: drop the hyper ultra processed foods, refined sugars, and carbs. So going back to you, talking about culturally wise, how do you do this when our main culture is so starch heavy? I mean, our Dominicans, I mean, it's all about the yuca, the papa, the plátano, la habichuela, the rice,
Hmm.
you
So
know.
with that, and what I want to, because Ada was to the point where she had to do major restriction to
I
her,
chose. I
right?
chose to
You
do that.
chose to do that.
I chose to do
So
that.
if we start learning about how food works, what carbohydrates are beneficial for our health, because we do need them if you're still in a healthy state, right? To make
Okay.
sure that your body continues to release what it should release and every system is working appropriately. When you start to learn about food and how it works and how to pair it and the timing and all this, then you don't need to get that far. But no one
Correct.
gives us everything at the beginning, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
One thing that can be done is really start to educate yourself. And something that I shared in my presentation on Tuesday is that we didn't really have to learn about these things before because we were eating mostly from the earth, like regular foods. Nothing was processed, everything was made. Even if it was fast food, it was like actual food. Nothing was done in labs and all that. Now we do have to learn about these things. It's our responsibilities because, like what
Yes.
I'm saying, things are ultra processed when it was
Hmm.
that way before. So now the responsibility falls on us basically to learn, because Western medicine, a lot of times, and trust me, I love my doctors, are treating symptoms,
Yeah, yeah,
but we have
yeah.
to advocate for our health and be the boss and work with the doctors on our team, right? Not around taking just their word for granted, like wanting to see your lab work in requesting these tests and these exams if you notice that something's not right, you know?
We have to understand that the way that our healthcare system developed was because we had all these not chronic, acute diseases. We had viruses that were killing our country. So
Mhm.
we needed to be reactive. We
Absolutely.
needed to create this medication to save lives.
Hmm.
But then we created an entire healthcare system based on that paradigm of being reactive.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
need to save lives. And then we forgot about being proactive,
Active, yeah.
and prevention.
Listen, I still believe this US corporate, trying like this whole capitalistic loop system, which capitalism is one thing, right? But like, how much money are these companies making from?
Let's not even go there. Let's not even go there. That's a conspiracy theory, okay?
I just want to make, so they don't regulate the food. They're putting a bunch of trash in it, and then no one tells you how to get better. Then you get sick. Then you need insulin, and you're paying all this, and everybody is on this loop, and they're making so much money. And these pharmaceutical companies are donating so much money to the politicians, and they turn the blind eye. They don't make pretend they don't know
Naomi, they are educating our doctors. They're the ones educating our doctors.
that too. Oh,
They are the ones with the big pockets to do those research studies that will tell you that there's nothing wrong with sugar.
right. So this is why we really wanted to bring conversations to light, to hear it, to see it, to feel it from people, women who look like you, who are in it themselves, who are really trying to educate our community and be like, wake up, listen, levántate.
Levántate, ya está bueno, ya está bueno. Let's
We
break those
things get that.
generational. Let's break those generational programming. Because I hear it all the time. It runs in my family.
Yeah.
And
I,
even obesity. I'm big because my entire family is big.
But that's because all are eating and doing the same thing.
You are just programmed to eat a certain way. So of course you're going to lead the same path.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I love what you said, that carbohydrates are not the enemy. If there's something I want to make clear here, is that carbohydrates are not the enemy, because I will admit that I became deadly afraid of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then having such success eliminating them, that even it made my fear even stronger. It validated my point of fearing them.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I had to really work with my mind and with my body to be able to tolerate them again. So knowing how the body responds to them is very absolutely key for you. One, not to fear them. Carbohydrates do not make you fat. They do not make you fat. We have to understand, however, that they are a fast fuel source. Do you need fast fuel source? Ask yourself, what do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? Most of us are sitting down 8 hours a day, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us are not physically active.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say physically active, I'm not talking about structured physical activity, aka exercise. That's separate.
Yeah.
Are you even exercising?
Yeah.
So if you don't have the demand for fast fuel source, you may want to start considering the amount of carbohydrates that you're consuming.
Mm-hmm.
Because the body is not going to have the demand for that energy, and that energy is going to get stored. Issue
Mm-hmm.
number one. Issue number two, in my opinion, is not just the carbohydrates, it's the frequency into which we're eating carbohydrates. We are told that we need to eat 3 times a day plus snacks. If we understand what happens biologically when you eat the carbohydrates, sugar goes up, insulin comes in, takes it out of this blood system. Blood sugars go down. Yes, blood sugar goes down, but guess who's still up?
Insulin.
Guess who's still up? Insulin is still up. And then what you do 2 hours later? You eat again. But insulin is still up.
But you know what?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people feel hungry because they're not eating balanced anyway. They're eating those fast fuel sources, so they continuously feel like they need to eat. And that's something I work a lot with my clients. And once they start eating like nutritiously dense meals that are going to keep them satisfied, they're like, oh my gosh, I went 3-4 hours. I'm not even hungry.
Yeah. Not to mention the physiology behind what happens when you eat carbs naked, when you eat them alone, which is not very good to do. So again, it's not just the carbohydrates. You have to understand how the body processes this thing. If you're eating carbohydrates alone, without any fiber, without any protein, without any fats, there's nothing that's going to help slow down the digestion of the simple sugars. Simple sugars are going to just go right through your intestines, go into the blood system, and spike up. There's nothing there to slow it down. Nothing. And then the higher the spike, the quicker it goes up, the more Miss Insulin has to come to the rescue. And then you're going to have this huge clearance really fast of glucose, and then blah, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm hangry, I need a snack, I need coffee, I cannot concentrate, I'm moody, don't talk to me. Why did that happen?
Absolutely.
So understanding that biology, you can understand now, okay, it's not that the carbs are bad, but I'm eating them naked. I'm not eating balanced meals, and I'm eating it too damn much, too regularly. Let insulin go down before you even consider a next meal.
Absolutely.
Because when insulin is in the blood system, you are telling the body to be a sugar burner. You're always in sugar burning mode. As long as insulin is in the blood system, my girlfriends, you are sugar burning. And if you want to become more metabolically flexible, we have to break that dependence. We have to teach the body to rely not so much in the sugars that you're giving it, which is normal. Sugar is glucose, is energy, but also, hey, I have body fat to lose. I would like to reduce. So you have to allow the body the opportunity to tap into its fat store. And if you're eating every 2 to 3 hours, that ain't going to happen. Especially if you're eating irresponsibly. You're eating things that are spiking your blood sugars and spiking insulin.
Hmm.
Physiology. I didn't make this up. I'm sorry.
No, that's what I tell my community all the time. This is not something that it's made up. This is not something that's new. This is not something I came up with, but it's not something that's widely spoken about. That's
Mm-mm.
the trendy thing. So like I feel so responsible for to keep sharing this information and to have conversations with people like you who understand, who's able to echo, who's able to share a different point of view of the same thing. You know, sometimes things connect differently when you hear it differently or when you hear it from somebody else. I have to run soon to pick up my boys, but I can talk to you for like 5 freaking hours, and maybe we should do
Yes.
part two about this because I think that there's so many things that we didn't get into,
Yes.
so many other tips and tidbits. Yeah. So, in the meantime, can you share one thing or two that somebody can do that's not there yet, but they want to be? And I feel like you've said it so many times already,
Yes.
but
Yes.
just a
Yes.
specific
Yes.
question will put people in that mindset. And
Yes.
where can people find you? How can they support you? How can they work with you? Share.
Thank you. Thank you. So as a recap, two simple things: frequency and food combination. Those two simple things alone. Actually, let's add another one. Eliminate the processed crap. Come on, guys.
Yes.
Let's we
Number
we know those things are not conducive to much. They're just empty calories. I don't want to demonize them because then the day that you do eat them, you're gonna feel guilty. Oh, I'm a bad person because I'm eating junk food. It's not about that. It's about doing things with awareness. Doing things
Mm-hmm.
with awareness. And what we do the majority of the time is what matters. Okay? That Doritos once in a blue moon ain't gonna kill you. But you have to do it with awareness of what you are doing. Okay? Just be aware. So those three things: eliminate the hyper ultra processed refined carbs and sugars. Okay? That alone, you should be able to see, progress at every level of your health.
Mm-hmm.
Combination. Do not eat naked carbs. Eat carbs with protein, with fats, and with fibers. Ideally, fibers first to allow that fiber to serve as a break so that that blood sugar doesn't spike so much. Remember, we don't want spikes. We want nice and slow, steady blood sugars. Okay. And third, timing. You don't have to be eating every 2 to 3 hours. Eating every 2 to 3 hours is just training your body to be dependent on glucose. And if you want to burn body fat, you have to break that dependence. You have to break it. And that's one way to do it. Okay? It takes time. Because if you're already metabolically broken, you cannot go through hours without eating. You're gonna feel it. Your brain is gonna tell you, feed me and feed me now, or you're gonna see me on the 6 o'clock news because I'm gonna commit a homicide. All right. So those three things is my tips to wrap this up. It's not that the carbs are enemy. We just have to learn about them and how to use them properly. And I call it responsibly.
Yeah.
Simple. And you can find me, I don't know, on Instagram, I guess,
Yeah.
the wellness room underscore Tampa. Yes, and that's what I do. I have my niche is this topic, blood sugars, because I don't want anybody else to go to the doctors and get the green bill of health and not be so. Just because we don't understand blood sugar management and we tend to ignore insulin. So please demand an fasting insulin number at your next doctor's visit. And if he refuses because insurance companies are not going to pay for it because it's not part of the protocol and their guidelines, let me tell you, there's plenty of online labs that you can use and buy them yourself for $12. Okay, it is super
Oh.
inexpensive and it can save your life. Okay, because you can catch your way, you can see if you're paving your way to insulin resistance, prediabetes, and diabetes just by knowing how your fasting insulin is doing. Okay, LabCorp can do it for $12. Quest can do it for 26. DM me or I'll give Naomi the information, the two labs that I use mostly to get those done. Your doctor doesn't even need to know about it. Your insurance doesn't even have to know about it. Super inexpensive, and it can tell you a lot of information. So yes, that's it. So like I said, yeah, so I teach about this stuff, and also I want my female Dominican friends to stop the craziness of looking for the forever diet. Okay, we need to learn how to create a healthy lifestyle.
Yes.
Okay, It's not a diet, guys. It's not a diet. It's not about chronically under eating your way and over exercising your way to being skinny. We all been there, we all done it, and we're sick of it. We know it doesn't work. So let's stop it.
Thank
Let's
you
stop it. Let's take
so
the
much.
time to learn.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I am so happy that we got to have this conversation. If
Yes.
I actually am running part 2 of a 2-day holiday wellness training where I'm going to be teaching in depth tip number 2 that Ada was talking about not eating naked carbohydrates. So you can go ahead and book and register in the link of my bio. If you're listening to this after November 22nd, that's when the training is over. But if it's before November 22nd, feel free to sign up and register for the free training. I am a food and health coach, and I help women take back control of their nutrition, lose weight without the dieting and restriction while living your best.
Yes.
Talking about through all this kind of education where you're actually learning about food, eating responsibly. I love that term that Ada is using, like used all throughout this life. So go ahead and connect with me. Ada left. Oh my gosh. I didn't get to say goodbye, but thank you so much, everybody, for being here. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Have a good day.